What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we're getting into week 2. We're going to break down the marquee games. We'll get into some of the other greasy games a little later this week. But before we get started, if you like this content, please subscribe, leave a like. Those things are free. They help a ton. A lot of you have done that. Thank you. If you have, it really does make a difference. And if you have any feedback, leave a comment, whether it's about the games, anything else, it helps a lot. Last thing, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's talk last week quickly before we get into this week. Won't have a chance to do a full breakdown, but eventually we'll get to some recap videos where we go through everything. Biggest things we learned. I think first and foremost in that Ohio State-Texas game, we learned that both teams are very good, especially on defense, and the offenses have a way to go. Arch Manning took a ton of criticism for a team that actually had a post-game win expectancy around 80%. So that's just what you get sometimes when you're playing like a number 3 defense and you're Arch Manning making your first start. He didn't have the luxury of playing New Mexico like Bryce Underwood or something like that. So yeah, there were problems. The accuracy was bad. The footwork was bad. Even I could tell. I'm not a quarterback expert throwing behind receivers without a solid base. It was kind of tough to watch. It wasn't that much better for Sayin, but it definitely was a little bit better. The receivers disappointed, like Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith. And on the Alabama thing, losing as an outright favorite again, a double-digit favorite again for Kalen DeBoer is a disaster outcome. He's rightfully getting dragged by the Alabama fan base. You guys are crazy, but I love you. I can't believe some of the stuff you've dug up. A lot of it, criticism well-deserved, players missing meetings, late to stuff, ordering food to the team hotel before games. And on top of that, just not being buttoned up. The effort level was unbelievably bad. You can search it. You can see Caden Proctor warming up, doing pass block sets with his phone in his hand during warmups. You can see Bray Hubbard refusing to chase down plays throughout the field. You can find all that on Twitter. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. All I'm trying to say here is that it's a problem. Other teams are buttoned up. They're giving full effort. In spots where you're missing meetings or showing up late, God forbid other teams are doing that, if not going the extra mile. There are kids sleeping at facilities across the country. I don't know why, but they are. So Alabama needs to put it together. They are the most talented team in the country roster-wise. Talented, most talented, does not mean the best. That would ignore coaching and a lot of other factors. They were rightfully downgraded. I didn't even have to do anything. The model just took care of it. You can't put up that kind of performance with this roster and expect results. Other games, Colorado, we were on them. A loss we took, a rightful loss. The only takeaway I really have is as bad as Colorado played, they were still in position to potentially take that game from Georgia Tech because of all the turnovers. And Deion cost them with his clock management. The real takeaway is just be aware of that for future games. Deion does not know what he's doing late in games. Nebraska was another team with a post-game win expectancy below 50%. Cincinnati, kind of the hallmark of their program, and formerly the hallmark of Nebraska's program, is they love finding a way to give games to their opponent. Cincinnati did it yet again. Nebraska gets a win that was not the most deserved win on the slate. Otherwise, the other big game we didn't mention, a couple of them, Clemson, LSU. A lot of people fall into the returning production trap without actually analyzing who the players are. The biggest key in that game was that Clemson just got demolished in the trenches. LSU's offensive line came together. Their defensive line was very impressive. Clemson's offensive line was around 70th last year, and generally when you return all 5 starters from a unit that was around 70th, you're seeing a jump maybe to 55, 50, not into the top 5. But if you're LSU and you have new starters that are 4 and 5 stars across the board, you can see seismic jumps in your production year over year. I actually showed some value on Clemson, but just that returning production versus 5 stars, new starters, was enough to give me pause. So luckily dodged a bullet there. Notre Dame, Miami, I don't think there's too much to really get into in this game. I think the rightful team won. They were at home, of course. That's Miami. And I think it was about by the correct margin. If there's one takeaway, I'm not sure why Notre Dame got so cute with it. Jeremiah Love did not touch the ball enough, especially early in the game. Just kind of a confusing deployment for your best player who theoretically should be touching the ball as many times as possible in those tight games. So those are the results that stuck out to me. Hopefully in the future weeks, we'll have full breakdowns, get to all the lines, what happened in the games. Those are just the big ones and the major takeaways. But let's dive into the current slate. Not quite as elite up top, but still a very good slate. We're going to kick things off with Michigan taking on Oklahoma. This game is a 5.5-point spread in favor of the Sooners. Total in the game is 45.5. Both these teams played cupcakes week one. Michigan did play an FBS team in New Mexico. They absolutely slaughtered them, even if the game appeared close in the second half. Wasn't particularly close throughout. When you dive into the box scores, average margin of victory was wider than the 17. Yards per play was 7.2 to 3.6. Turnover margin 3-1. Penalties, they only had one penalty in the entire game. It was a very clean performance from Michigan across the board. As you're breaking in a freshman quarterback, then Oklahoma, they played an FCS team, absolutely crushed them. So it's hard to take anything away. On this screen, the efficiency metrics, just know that they're very hard to quantify. This week one is the time when we have the least data, especially when teams have played FCS opponents. It's hard enough to quantify when you have Kent State versus Oklahoma. But then you bring in these FCS teams like Illinois State, it becomes increasingly difficult to quantify efficiency metrics. So I'll try to talk through them. I'll just know that these are like when you see a team like, I don't know, Missouri's coming up later, they're like top 10 in some metrics. They're clearly not a top 10 team, but they outperformed expectation against their opponent. It'll normalize as we get a couple weeks in. Last thing, teams that played FCS schools don't have pass rates or pace just yet. That data will come in. Then on the O-line, 29, 24, you see that on Michigan. The left number is pass blocking. The right number is run blocking. So to get into the stylistics, Michigan coming into this game, they're a little hurt. Rod Moore still hasn't played. He's a DB that's been banged up the last 2 years. The big news is they lost Barham for the first half of this game, their edge rusher, because of a targeting. On the Oklahoma side, they didn't play Kendall Doby or Peyton Bowen at defensive back, just gave him an extra week of rest after season-ending injuries last year. I think they'll both play. Torrey Blaylock, their freshman running back, who actually played more than anyone else, got hurt in the game. I think he'll be okay. Jacob Sexton on the offensive line is another guy just to watch. I'm not sure about that. Michigan this year looks like they're going to play faster and pass more with Underwood. Even though they played New Mexico, he played well in his debut, 68% completion percentage, 8.1 yards per attempt. Didn't have any big-time throws or turnover-worthy plays. And he didn't run the ball at all either. -5 yards. He took 2 sacks. They were elite in terms of pressure rate, only 12%. Faced 4 pressures. 2 of them actually turned into sacks, which needs cleaning up. But I think it's kind of wheels up for this offense. Last year, their passing attack was non-existent. They at least have that threat. And their weapons, I think, are probably a little bit better. It's like I was really impressed with Marlon Klein at tight end. He had 93 yards. I don't think he's going to be as dynamic as Loveland, but still, that is a quality number for a tight end that you weren't expecting that from. The wide receivers did struggle. They had 4 drops. They can't be doing that. The run game, predictably, it's kind of a Michigan staple. Justice Haynes at 9.9 yards per carry. He sort of ran some laps around Jordan Marshall, so that's good to see. I still have a lot of questions with the receivers overall, but you can't really complain with this unit. It was a quality outcome for Michigan. The offensive line, they lost 3 starters, so this is a unit that I think could you poke some holes in? Probably. Especially because they went out and started Brady Norton at guard, who is a Cal Poly transfer. That's a big question for me. But you look at the rest of the unit. Crippen comes back. El Hadi's kind of the lone good player for this team. Evan Link started last year. He's a 4-star who needs to improve. But you're turning to Andrew Sprague as your right tackle. He's a 4-star sophomore. And then Norton coming in. He's a player from Cal Poly that's going to have to just play better than the FCS level. So there's definitely concerns. The returns were pretty good in this first game, but a lot to be desired moving forward. Still, you got to prove it to me. And they're facing Oklahoma. I mean, this defense is a quality defense. They didn't even play all their players yet. We mentioned Doby didn't play. Bowen didn't play. Those are guys in the secondary. Among players that they did have out there, like Gentry Williams, he's back playing just fine. You still have a lot of quality players in the back end. Robert Spears-Jennings was an absolute stud last year. So was Bowen, though. So, I mean, like getting him back is going to be huge for this defense. Then at linebacker, they brought in Kendall Daniels. They already had a quality unit with Kip Lewis. This unit is very, very good, even though you lose arguably your best player on defense. And then in the front 7, I mean, there's so much depth for this team. A guy like David Stone last year, a 5-star, barely even played. He's now a sophomore. Just so much room for growth, even though they did lose some players. They also brought in Marvin Jones Jr., who's kind of a cast-off from previous programs, but a former 5-star. It's going to be hard to get anything going. This defensive line certainly has the advantage over Michigan's offensive line. And if you're going to pressure Bryce Underwood, I'm just a little worried what that looks like for a player so young. We already saw him take 2 sacks and just 4 pressures. It's a very small sample. His receivers didn't do him a lot of favors with the 4 drops. I think this could be a problem. On the other side, you have John Mateer taking over. He comes with his OC. This unit's probably going to play a little faster than last year and balanced. They were kind of derailed from the start by injuries, but Mateer is a quarterback. Didn't really give us any cause for concern in the first game, 392 yards. He's very mobile. I guess my biggest concern is while he had 5 big-time throws, he had 2 turnover-worthy plays. You just can't be doing that against Michigan. I think his skill position players are better than Michigan's. A guy like Jaden Ott, while he's been banged up in camp, barely got on the field. Playing behind Torrey Blaylock, kind of a disaster for him. Honestly, I'm not sure why he transferred here. They didn't even play guys like Taylor Tatum either. Like Javonte Barnes and Xavier Robinson played clearly ahead of him. Not sure how much the injury played a role. And then wide receiver, you turned over a lot of the position, but Burks came back from injury. Satina came in from Arkansas. Keontae Lewis up from the FCS, formerly played at Wisconsin, though. Plus a lot of 4 and 5 stars that didn't even see the field. Canuck actually had a good game at tight end. This guy almost went for 100 yards. I think the edge is Oklahoma's direction in supporting cast, too. Offensive lines where I get a little hesitant. I think they might be a little better than Michigan. They have a lot of returning production, but this is a unit that was around 90th last year. So part of that because of injury, almost everyone got hurt. I'm not really buying the transfers. Like Beklenko comes in from, and Mikula come in from really low-level programs like Stanford. I'm not super impressed with who they're playing. But honestly, this could just be better with time. Logan Howland's a 4-star, now a redshirt sophomore. Troy Everett, he's a returning star that actually was good with this team. So there's a little bit of room for growth. Plus, like, Michael Fasusi hasn't played yet. He's a 5-star freshman. They started a 4-star freshman in Brian Fogy. So there is room for growth with this Oklahoma offensive line. I think a little more so than what we saw in Michigan. My main concern is, they still average 3.2 yards per carry against Illinois State. Hopefully it comes together with time, but I would give them a slight edge. And then what they face on the other side with just Michigan's defense, this defensive line is definitely fierce, but they're kind of taking a little bit of a step back, at least in the first half, without Barham. You're going to rely a lot more on TJ Guy and Cameron Brandt. That's definitely a step down. The interior lost so much production to the NFL. So it's just Rayshon Benny, who was a rotational guy last year. And then you're relying on transfers, Devon Payne and Trey Williams from Clemson. That's a little bit concerning to me. Linebacker, I think, will be okay. Ernest Hausman and Jimmy Roller, both solid. And then in the back end, I think your defensive back probably going to come together. Wish Rod Moore was back, but you did get Mangum back from injury. Jair Hill was already a stud last year. Hillman was okay. So now you kind of just need a little bit more to step up. But without your best pass rusher against an offensive line that's improved for Oklahoma, I think Mateer can test this defense both through the air and on the ground. As far as where we make this line, we have it just outside the current number, which shows a little bit of value to the Oklahoma side. I don't think I can really test this right now. We currently make it right inside 7, 6.9. If you wanted to look at a total, I think over is somewhat interesting. We have that at 47, largely just because we're expecting Michigan to play a little faster and pass heavier. Oklahoma, playing that same offense that Arbuckle and Mateer had last year, was already explosive, and they're not super slow or run heavy or anything like that. So showing a little value on the over, not something I love, and this will just be a lean for now. SMU takes on Baylor. This game is a 2-point spread in favor of SMU. Taking a little money on the Baylor side. The total is 65.5, 6.6, excuse me. Just a typo. But Baylor against Auburn came out really pass heavy, really fast. That's kind of what they want to do. SMU is a team that already plays really fast. They were fairly balanced last year under Kevin Jennings, expecting a lot of the same. For injuries, Dawson Pendergrass and Michael Turner have been out for Baylor. Carl Williams is expected back at defensive back, but then they lost Jackie Marshall. He is on the depth chart, so we'll see if he plays. He's a very important defensive lineman for this team. For SMU, it's basically just Jordan Hudson who got hurt in week 1. Overall, Baylor, first game they lost to Auburn. They had a 2% win expectancy, so kind of the right outcome. And Auburn just ran it right down their throat. Baylor did have 9 penalties. They had a couple big turnover on downs, 2 of them in the red zone, but they just couldn't stop their run. This team gave up over 6 yards per carry. They didn't even really use Jackson Arnold. They just slammed the ball right down their throat with Damari Elston. SMU, meanwhile, they've smashed up East Texas A&M, so there's not much to take away from that. They did have 11 penalties and 3 turnovers, but they smashed yards per play. They had 2 defensive scores. That's going to be a big edge for SMU this year. So that's kind of the context behind week 1 for both these teams. While Baylor did look good at times, scored 24 points, they just couldn't stop Auburn at all. Quarterback. Let's start with Baylor. You have Sawyer Robertson. He had a decent game. 56% completion, 8.7 yards per attempt, 2 big time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play, took 3 sacks. His O-line was doing him no favors. 38.5% pressure rate. That'll happen when you're facing Keldrick Falk from Auburn. But still, you can't be doing that. And that was an offensive line we were expecting to be pretty good. They lost just 1 starter. It was well above average last year. This unit was in the 40s. Thought they might take a step forward. They're coming in really bad this year. 119th in pass blocking, 56th to start the year. And we projected them as the 3rd best offensive line to start the season. Like coming into Big 12 play, we thought this unit was going to be number 3 in the conference. There's still some optimism. It's not like they lost the players they're returning. The only major concern I really have with this team is how good are they really up top, I guess. But it's good offensive line. I expect them to be better against better opponents. As far as the skill players, I mean, Baylor is good skill players. I was impressed with their run game. Bryson Washington behind that offensive line couldn't get a ton going. But Cole Wilson, the Texas State transferred 134 yards. Michael Trigg 99. Ashton Hawkins recently cleared at 70. And their wide receiver 1, Cameron, was at 54. With Sawyer Robertson dealing, like they can move the ball. These are good skill players. Offensive line, I think, will be better in games that just don't have as solid of defensive lines on the other side. And for SMU, their strength is their secondary. This is a team that lost 8 starters, but 2 of them that return, Isaiah Nokobia and Ahmad Moses, are elite in the secondary. And Deuce Harmon comes back at corner too. So right away, a Baylor team that is passing the ball more than they're running, you're throwing into that secondary. They had 2 defensive scores in the first game. Absolutely slaughtered East Texas A&M, which again isn't saying much. As far as the defensive line, I still think this unit is going to be a pretty fierce group with Cam Robertson, Isaiah Smith, and Jonathan Jefferson back, plus some transfers. This SMU defense could actually be the strength of their team, which is definitely not what they're known for. So I'm also worried about Baylor this week if you're going to see some of the same problems. Don't think this unit's quite as good as Auburn, but SMU's defense is definitely one I would fear as a Baylor backer. On the other side, Kevin Jennings is back. So far, he has a 73% completion percentage, 8.7 yards per attempt. Big concern for me, 1 big-time throw, 2 turnover-worthy plays. Only 1 was converted to an interception, but we've seen him sort of stagnate in recent games. Prior to last week against A&M, East Texas A&M, kind of just the playoff was the stale taste in our mouths, and that was not a good one. His offensive line, 20% pressure rate was pretty good, but he had a 43% pressure to sack ratio, taking 3 sacks. It just wasn't the cleanest game for Jennings. It is what it is. Both of these quarterbacks are efficient passers overall, but Jennings provides more on the ground. So I think you still give an edge there, but I'm starting to get a little nervous about that, and I don't say it as cleanly as I would have coming into the year. The skill position players, I think, are a little better for SMU than people give them credit for. This is a running back by committee. I know people fell in love with Brashard Smith last year. They used TJ Harden. They used Chris Johnson Jr. Both of them were over 5 yards per carry. They didn't use a lot of their redshirt freshmen, who I know people are really excited about, McFall, and that was always a potential outcome. The wide receiver room, it's weaker than last year. Jordan Hudson also got hurt in week 1, but you still have Romello Brinson, former 4-star, put up 121 yards. They have a lot of really good recruits. Like they played freshman 4-star Jalen Cooper right away and he had 73 yards. Plus they got RJ Maryland back from injury at tight end, who's like this hybrid receiver who can line up in the slot across the way. So I think this unit is somewhat underrated. Still give Baylor the edge for skill position players, but not by a ton. Offensive line, SMU lost 2 starters from the 29th ranked pass blocking unit, 48th ranked run blocking unit. I think this offensive line is going to be awesome. They split some time between Savion Byrd and Zion Nelson at one of the tackle positions, but they're just returning so much production from an offensive line that was already really good. This unit shouldn't be taking a big step back. So you should be able to run behind it. Their 2 starters that come in from new programs are Joshua Bates, Addison Nichols. These are Power 4 starters from previous programs. It's not like you're taking, like Michigan's taking a Cal Poly transfer. That's not what SMU is doing. So I have high hopes for this offensive line. Early returns were pretty good on them. They're facing a Baylor defense, which I thought would be better. Auburn is a quality offense. I just don't really know how to put this. You're replacing 6 starters already. Jackie Marshall goes down. He's your best run stuffer. Best one. Can't have that right away. Your drop off for him, you go to like Devontae Tizzino. It's a massive drop off. You already were replacing players on the edge, relying on 2 transfers in Amarian Winston and Matthew Fobbs-White. Like, you can't lose your best player in the defensive line, which they may have. But linebacker room, also relying on transfer, Travion Barnes. The secondary was supposed to be the biggest concern, but suddenly your front 7 is giving up over 6 yards per carry for a duration of a game against Auburn. I don't know. This is concerning. And then, I mean, like, they weren't even tested in the secondary. This still could be a concern. We don't know if this unit is rebuilt the way we think it is. They did not turn to a lot of transfers. The only one who started was Devin Turner, and a projected starter was Devin Turner. They end up starting Tyler Turner in his place, excuse me for mixing up the Turners. But I mean, I still don't really know what we're getting. Jackson Arnold's not a player that tested you. So there's concerns on the back end. I don't think Kevin Jennings is going to be running for his life and throwing into coverages that are really scaring you. Overall, I think SMU still has advantages in this game. I know they played the FCS team and Kevin Jennings are the 2 turnover-worthy plays. Baylor looked good in spurts, but we still have SMU power rated ahead. They're -2 right now. My only hesitation is I don't know when the money's going to stop coming in on Baylor. So we're going to wait on this and play SMU as it gets closer to kickoff. It's already moved from 3 to -2. Next up, the Cyhawk game. Iowa State. I am notorious for betting the team that wins this game and covers incorrectly. Generally, over the last 4 or 5 years, there's teams that have positive post-game win expectancies that lose. I don't know why, but it keeps happening. And I've gotten really lucky like 4 years in a row on this game, picking. And it's the game where no one ends up happy. The team that won probably shouldn't have and generally has some sort of problem where they didn't produce. And the team that lost thinks they should have won but ended up losing. Tough game. And overall, that's a lot of Iowa games just in general. This team is more banged up than normal for a week 2 game. Reese Vanderzee got hurt in camp. That's their wide receiver 1. Their running back 1, Kamari Moulton, is in a sling. He's not on the depth chart this week. The only major injury for Iowa State is Trevor Burr, and that's an illness. He's on the offensive line. And honestly, Jim Boniface has been a completely adequate replacement, so I don't think that matters at all. Iowa, we've seen them one time. They absolutely beat the snot out of Albany, and that game wasn't all that clean. Pass game was brutal. I'm not sure what Mark Gronowski was doing, drinking the night before or something. It was like the second quarter, and the guy could not stay on the field with cramps. I'm just begging Iowa to bring him a glass of water out there. But it wasn't a good game. He had a 53% completion, 2.9 yards per pass attempt. He did rush for 39 yards, still took 1 sack. The pressure rate was a little higher than I expected at 35%. A lot of that was his own fault. He held the ball way too long when he was passing. And the inaccuracy was really bad. It was an awful debut for Gronowski. Hank Brown played better than him, so we'll see what they do. For Iowa State, we've seen them twice now. They beat Kansas State with a 21% post-game win expectancy, so already using up a little bit of that luck. That was a really sloppy game, so I can't really fault anyone for taking Iowa State to begin with, but they should have lost. They were outgained 6.7 to 4.2 in yards per play. And then last week, they beat South Dakota very, very badly. As far as the Iowa State side, like Rocco Becht has been a wizard for this team. They just don't put enough around him. 69% completion, 9.6 yards per attempt, 3 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. 33 rushing yards equates to 1.9 yards per carry, but when you watch him, the functional mobility is crazy. He is under duress immediately when he's playing good teams, and somehow he's crafty enough to find his way out of it. This O-line has done him no favors, and the only reason his pressure rate's at 22% is because they mixed in an FCS team. I'm very concerned with Iowa State and their offensive line, and probably the longevity of Becht. But as long as he is in there, he gives you a chance to win games. The skill position players are bad. There's just no way around this. Carson Hansen and Abu Sama are both averaging under 4 yards per carry with an FCS team in there. And part of that is their offensive line. They were awful last year. They're not a lot better this year. Trevor Burr's been gone. That doesn't make a difference. This unit returned 5 starters, and the only player that was average last year was Dylan Barrett. It just kind of is what it is. This unit, like Clemson on their offensive line, you can't project a jump from like 85th to 25th. Like, it just doesn't happen year over year. We do project growth moving forward, but Iowa State, they're going to get Becht killed at some point. And then the receivers, like they go out and they get Xavier Townsend and Chase Sowell. Both of them have been epic failures. Neither of them are really playing. Townsend didn't have a catch in the first game. Sowell barely played in the last one. The top two receivers are Brett Eskilsden and Dominic Overby. Honestly, the top two pass catchers are actually Gabe Burkle and Ben Brahmer, which is sort of like a unique player personnel, the package that they can deliver out there. Brahmer's 6'7". Like the 12 personnel is not something that all defenses are equipped to defend. So that's kind of an edge for them. But they missed on 2 transfers so far. I'm just like not really sure who you're throwing to. But, all that hasn't mattered. Beck somehow has got them through games with this. They are facing Iowa's defense, who's going to be by far the best defense they've played so far. They're currently 22nd overall. I still think there are holes in this defense. Linebacker, they have 4 4-stars on the roster. They did the whole we're going to start the older guys thing with Carson Scherer and Jaden Harrell. I wouldn't have done that, especially against like Albany. Like get your 4 stars. Not 2 of them are in year 1, 2 of them are in year 2. Like we need to maximize our talent on the field. They're not doing that. The secondary, they're starting TJ Hall and Deshaun Lee, who were both repeatedly benched last year. Their showing in week 1 wasn't great either. They're 75th in coverage, which, yeah, they had a lot of success against Albany, but this is success compared to expectations. So we were concerned with those guys heading into the game. That's still a concern moving forward. Defensive line should be elite. No real concerns there. Back 7 is a concern for me. The question is, like, does this pressure get home before Beck gets a chance to deliver the ball downfield? And that's kind of the question I don't know the answer to, but it's the biggest one. On the Iowa side, I just don't know how good Gajewski is. I don't think he was awesome in the FCS, and we saw them play teams up level in competition, and he looked fine. He's very mobile. I don't know what the cramps thing was about. He needs to figure out how to hydrate and stay on the field. Fortunately, it's, that's not going to be a problem forever, hopefully. The skill players aren't good for him, though. There are people making the case that his skill position group with South Dakota State was better than what Iowa has. I don't think it's true, but there's at least some merit to it. Their top receiver right now is Sam Phillips, who's a Chattanooga transfer. Their back is hurt, so you're looking at Xavier Williams coming in. Pass catchers are a big concern outside of maybe like tight end with Estrella. So he's going to have to play a little hero ball. That's kind of just the case with Iowa. The reason I'm so optimistic in this offense and why I don't think that matters a ton, this O-line is so good. We had them as one of the best offensive lines in the Big Ten coming into the year with 3 elite returning starters. Jennings Dunker is an All-American candidate. They had 2 replacements. They were both quality players. As far as the recruiting problems with Iowa go, it's not on the O-line. They get good players there. Thought they were probably just going to play like this ball control offense and run behind their O-line. That's what they did. But maybe be a little more dynamic with a run threat QB and Gajewski. He just couldn't keep his calves from cramping, so we didn't really see it. Iowa State has a lot of problems on defense. They gave up over 6 yards per play to Kansas State. They lost 8 starters. Their only difference maker on the defensive line is Dominique Orange. The linebackers that came back from last year from injury, last year they were playing with walk-ons. They have not stepped up. Caleb Bacon has been shaky in spots. It's a lot of unproven starters, unexpected starters, especially in the secondary. The only player back there who's playing well is Jontez Williams. And when we projected the depth chart ahead of the year, we're using the best players projected on the team. When those players don't start, it's not that the younger players or the walk-ons really stepped up and outperformed expectation. Generally, it's that the young or the players that we thought were going to be good were not as good as we thought. So this line, I don't know. I'm honestly considering an Iowa plus a 3 in this spot. I think Iowa State's going to take some money, so I don't really see why you would take this now. But this is going to be a really volatile game. Not a lot of faith in Iowa State's defense. Really, my main concern with backing an Iowa spot, one, it's just quarterback. It's quarterback on both sides. Beck will bury you if he gets the chance, and I have no idea what Gajewski is at this point. Just haven't seen enough of him at a high level of competition. And is Iowa's defense good enough this year to be the difference-making unit it has been in the past? Arizona State takes on Mississippi State. This is a rematch from last year's game. It was a fairly close game, too. 6-point spread in favor of Arizona State. The total is 59 points. Injuries on the Arizona State side. Shimon Mateer got hurt last week. Jalen Moss also got hurt. That's one of the tight ends and starting receivers. For Mississippi State, Blake Steen, an offensive tackle, got hurt in week 1. They also didn't have Luke Work, who's a backup offensive tackle for this team. Jet Jefferson missed week 1 as well at corner. As far as pace of play stuff goes, Arizona State is very run heavy and below average in pace. Maybe they will throw a little more without Scadaboo. Mississippi State is balanced and they play at the speed of light. It's a Jeff Lebby offense. We know what he does. He's going to play as fast as possible. What did these teams do in week 1? Arizona State played Northern Arizona. That game was actually closer than it probably should have been, but Northern Arizona is a good team. This team gave Arizona a game last year, shut down Tech McMillan somehow. They're well coached. But Arizona State still wins by double digits. They win yards per play 7.7 to 4.7. Mississippi State played an upstart Southern Miss team who's better than people think too. They won 34 to 17. The average margin of victory was 31 points. It's just that Mississippi State made some mistakes, had 8 penalties, still soundly outgained Southern Miss in the long run. So it was good to see. As far as Arizona State, they're traveling to Starkville. This is a tough place to play. They're going to stay as, their coaching staff has been very vocal about over an hour away from the stadium because all the hotels close by are casinos. Look that up if you haven't seen it from Dillingham. It's funny. But Sam Levitt is back at QB. He needs to be a difference maker this year without Scadaboo. 63% completion, 6.8 yards per attempt, 1 big time throw, 2 turnover-worthy plays. It was a bad showing through the air for him against an FCS team, but he did run for 73 yards. That was 10.4 yards per carry while taking 2 sacks too. Offensive line was pretty decent, 22% pressure rate. Again, I think Northern Arizona is a better FCS team than a lot of them, so it still needs to be at least reminded that that's the case. The run game without Scadaboo was pretty good. Kyson Brown, Raleek Brown, Kanye Udo, they were all above 7 yards per carry. So I'm pretty optimistic so far on that unit. We'll see what they could do against better teams. The wide receiver room, Jalen Moss got hurt again, but I'm still a little confused what they're doing. Tyson got his, of course, 141 yards. Malik McClain was the only other receiver with a catch. And we go through camp. We hear all this stuff about Jaron Hamilton, the 4-star transfer. He's balling out in camp. They played a walk-on over him. What are we doing with these walk-ons? Of course, Derek Esubio did exactly what you thought and didn't make a single catch. I'm just not sure how this could possibly happen. There's just no way on planet Earth that Esubio is better than Jaron Hamilton. It's just not. I don't know. And maybe it's the injury to Moss, why he had to play more. It just doesn't make any sense. The offensive line for this team, they only lost 1. So this is a unit that's expected to be about average, maybe a little above average. I don't think they did anything to change that for me. It's a good unit overall. I don't think they're a difference-making unit. They weren't last year. Honestly, some people might incorrectly think they were. Scadaboo just did so much for that team. It kind of just is what it is. I think they'll be okay and decent moving forward. Just transfers on this team are pretty low level, like Jamoto, Abigbo, the Heltons is what it is. Anyway, against this defense, this is where the matchup I think is very key. Mississippi State's defense, I think, is a lot better. They came out 34th with a real opponent on the other side. They only lost 4 starters. The defensive line's very good. Their transfers, Malik Silla, Will Whitson, these are good transfers. The players they brought back, they had good players already on this team. Jennings on the edge is a player that's a 4-star recruit, had a pretty decent season last year on a team that was relatively inept. And then on the inside, Kedrick Bingsley Jones is back. He's another player with decent recruiting caliber. As far as the linebackers go, Zachary Tillman, he's another player that came back, joined by Jalen Smith. Really, the biggest difference, I think, is the secondary. They had a lot of very good recruits. Kelly Jones is a 4-star. You had to play right away as a freshman. You have a lot of other younger players that are 4-star caliber, like Isaac Smith, 4-star. Kelly Jones, 4-star. Hunter Washington, 4-star. Tony Mitchell, 4-star. Now some of them are starting to play. Plugging the gaps with former transfers like Diego Brumfield, Jerron Manning from Old Dominion. Their secondary has the chance to be a lot better, and that's what has me worried if you're looking at the Arizona State side. This team is not dynamic without Scadaboo. I personally think Tyson's the player you have to stop, and if you stop him, you have a chance. On the other side, Blake Shapen is back. He's a veteran coming off the injury. So far, 79% completion, 8.2 yards per attempt, 1 big-time throw, 1 turnover-worthy play. He's not a big rusher, but he did take 2 sacks on a 20% pressure rate. It's got to clean that up a little bit. His pass catchers and skill position players are pretty decent. Devon Booth, 4.9 yards per carry, Fluff Bothwell, from South Alabama, 4.3. That could be a little better in the run game, but it wasn't bad by any means. Brennan Thompson, 92 yards. Seydou Traore, 77. Pass catchers had a decent showing for this team in week 1. I think they're a little weaker than last year just because they lost Mario Craver, who was such a stud. But the unit's pretty good. The offensive line, I think they have a chance to be a lot better at the very least on this unit. When you look and see what they returned, what departed, overall, the unit brought in some quality transfers. Zach Owens, Kobe Keemum, Blake Steen, we need him to be healthy. But the players they return are actually pretty decent too. So Jimothy Lewis is a former 4-star, now in his 2nd season. Can he actually take a step forward? Other players that are going to play, Cannon Boone, Jacoby Jackson, both projected above average. It should be a decent offensive line. As far as what they're going to face on defense, Arizona State comes in 87th after 1 game. I only highlight the 1-game sample there because they played an FCS team and they came in 101st in coverage. That is noteworthy. And they didn't have the game was never in doubt, but you can't be giving up this many big plays to opposing teams from the FCS level. They lost 3 starters. The edge group, I think, is going to be a strength with Prince Dorba, Clayton Smith. The interior is more concerning to me personally. I'm not sure what you're really going to rely on there. But then when you look at some of the other players on this team, like linebacker and secondary, there are definitely some concerns there as well, too. This team, I think, is overall pretty decent. Few big plays were allowed back there. But, man, I'm just not sure what you're looking at with like 5.8 yards per attempt allowed to another team. Like, that's not great on paper, but it's an FCS team. So what are we doing here with Arizona State and all this returning production? If I'm looking at like the biggest difference makers in the secondary, Xavier Alford, he's not a player that was recruited highly. Like Miles Rouser's a 4-star. This unit is just, they can be beat. And they played a lot of really close games last year and ended up on the positive end of them. So we're looking at Mississippi State +6. I played a +7 when it came out. I think you can still take the +6. When I look to the model and what we have for this game, we still make it inside the 6 number. Obviously, home field advantage being a big part of this. But right now, 2 teams kind of headed in the opposite direction. Not by a ton. Mississippi State definitely taking steps forward. Arizona State's roster is a little worse than last year's team that made the college football playoff. We actually make this closer to a -3 in favor of Arizona State. So actually, looking at this, happy playing this through some more key numbers. Total, we have spot on at 58.5, so not much to be seen there. Ole Miss takes on Kentucky. SEC game in week 2. All right. Ole Miss is a 10-point favorite on the road. Total is 52 points. Injuries for Ole Miss. Luke Haas might actually play in this game at tight end. I think he's going to miss, but we don't know. Jalen Braxton, he's defensive back, missed their last game. Delano Townsend also missed 2. I think that might be performance related, but we don't know. For Kentucky, Jamarian Wilcox was suspended, and then Humphrey Grace, I should say. He had an ankle injury last week. I'm not sure what we get from him. As far as stylistics, Ole Miss is fast. They play a balanced style. It's, Lane Kiffin, we know what we're getting. Kentucky's really slow and run heavy under Bush Hamden. It is what it is. Ole Miss beat up on Georgia State badly in the first game, 63-7, even with 8 penalties. Crushed them in yards per play, doubled them up, actually. Kentucky beat Toledo 24-16. They did have a 97% post-game win expectancy somehow, despite losing the yard per play battle 4.6 to 4.7. They had 11 penalties themselves. They had a bunch of turnovers on down in the game. Like Toledo kept turning the ball over on downs. Kentucky gave up a safety. I mean, this game was a complete disaster. One of the ugliest games in the opening slate, and Akron play. So that's saying a lot. Let's start with the Ole Miss offense. They have the new shiny toy in Austin Simmons, the heir apparent at quarterback, getting a ton of hype in the preseason. He was fortunate, unlike Arch Manning in his first start, to play a cupcake team. So he finishes with a 64.5% completion, 11 yards per attempt, 3 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays. They both led into interceptions, too. 17 rushing yards, only took 1 sack, so that was pretty good for him. We just need him to clean it up. He played a god-awful opponent at 2 turnover-worthy plays. Clean up the turnover-worthy plays, and the rest of it was great. I think the skill position players are better than expected. Kawan Lacey and Logan Diggs, both nearly at 7 yards per carry. The receivers had a good showing. Harrison Wallace, 133 yards. Daquan Wright, Caleb Odom, and Dezon's dribbling were all just fine. Only thing I really need to see is against better competition, because I do think they're a little worse than last year at the skill position players. Offensive line did not have a good showing. They end up like 80th in pass blocking, 69th in run blocking off an FCS team. It's kind of concerning. I guess it makes a little sense. They only returned one starter, and it was Diego Pounds. The only other player who'd seen decent time for them was Jaden Williams, who actually played well. But this unit is banged up. I was surprised they didn't play Townsend. We'll see if he's hurt or this was a performance thing. But, I mean, this Ole Miss offensive line does not have the highest level transfers compared to some other teams. Like, even Townsend's from UAB. So, I mean, I'm not super optimistic. You're looking at, like, Kutas from Arkansas, Percy Lewis from Auburn, PJ Wilkin. There's definitely concerns. And Diego Pounds is the only player coming back that was, like, a real difference maker. So, I mean, against better defensive lines, Austin Simmons might have his work cut off for him. Can Kentucky be that? Maybe. They lost 7 starters. They do bring back 7 with some experience. A lot of them are DBs, though, and none of them were that good in the defensive backfield. John Keys Hardaway was really the only difference maker. And then you look to the defensive line, where you probably need to win against Ole Miss offensive line to win the game if you're going to pull an upset. Because, again, I think your path is taking advantage of that offensive line, pressure Austin Simmons before he can take off on the ground or throw to those receivers. But, like Sam Green from USC, David Gusa from Washington State, those guys are good. But you just lost Mike's Humphrey Grace, who is probably your best defensive lineman. That's going to be a big loss. They just don't have the guys to replace them. Like, David Gusa is fine. He's jumping up to the SEC from Washington State. The only player I had some confidence in, especially on the edge, was Humphrey Grace. It's a big loss. Linebackers a completely inexperienced position. Alex Afari and Davern Rayner replacing the former starters. There are definitely questions with this defense, even though they had a good showing in the first game. Generally, this is a pretty good unit for Kentucky, but I still think we want to see them against better teams. Toledo's a good MAC team. They're still a MAC team. As far as the offense, Zach Calzada, man, what was this performance? 43.5% completion percentage, 3.7 yards per attempt, no big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. I mean, what in the world did I just watch? This was horrible. It might be the worst. Ben Finley played, so it couldn't be the worst quarterback performance of the week, but damn near close. Skill position players are awful. I mean, these receivers we knew were going to be awful coming into the year. Every single one of them was a cast-off from a program that didn't want them, like Troy Stellato. I mean, they accounted for 4 catches. What were we expecting? Some of that's on Calzada, but a lot of this is on the receivers. I guess the only redeeming quality was Dante Dowdell at 9.2 yards per carry. He kind of iced McGowan a little bit. I wasn't expecting that, but this is a horrifying group of skill position players, and it's worse than I thought. Offensive line is decent, though. They lost 4 full-time starters. They bring 2 back, Jaeger Burton and Jalen Farmer. The transfers are all pretty decent on this team. I thought they were going to be a team that just wins by bullying people. Like, they should take on a full Iowa game plan. Run the ball 70% of the time. Use Dowdell. Use McGowan. Use your offensive line. Try to bully teams. Because I don't think Calzada and this group of horrible receivers is cutting it for this team. So that's how they have to score. Can they do it? Fortunately for them, Ole Miss turns over really their whole defense. Only 2 starters are back. They still have a ton of upside, though, like a lot of really highly recruited players. One of the returners is Suntarine Perkins off the edge. Deshaun Womack is here. Xavier Harris. That's a good defensive line. It's not going to be easy to just bully them and run the ball down their throat. And then as far as the rest of the team, linebacker room is a complete mess. They lost everybody. Secondary rotated a ton in this game. They have 7 transfers. Most of them are from legit programs. My biggest concern is they allowed 5.5 yards per carry to Georgia State. So that's at least worth mentioning. Some of that late in the game. Honestly, there's enough pause in this game for me to just avoid it. This is one of the harder handicaps on the board because you have 2 quarterbacks that need adjustments quickly. You need to keep up with these or you're just going to get bad lines. I thought Calzada was going to be better. Is this performance we saw in week 1 enough to downgrade him significantly? I think so, but how much? Because it affects the line. And conversely, Austin Simmons, generally a new 4-star quarterback that comes in, has an expectation when you throw him against a certain opponent. It's lower when you're facing Ohio State and Texas, see Arch Manning, see Julian Sand. It's higher when you throw them into Georgia State, which is what we got from Simmons. Now playing Kentucky, who is in between Georgia State and Ohio State, what is the expectation? So this is very hard to quantify for a player with one start. This could be like, I wouldn't fault you if you like the Kentucky side. Like, I wouldn't fault you for like debating a money line. If you're debating Ole Miss, I wouldn't be surprised if they win by like 21 points. The alt lines are in play. There's a lot of volatility in this game because of the quarterbacks. Whatever your interpretation is of that, I think you could potentially make some more money by looking at alt stuff. I tentatively lean Kentucky just based on the math. This is about the least confident take I'm going to have in the whole program. Absolutely not close to taking this whatsoever. But mathematically, that's where I end up just based on what Calzada and Simmons have done so far in their careers. It's a horrifying game to analyze. Illinois takes on Duke. This is a weird one. They played last year. 3-point spread right now in favor of Illinois. Duke's taking money. They're probably going to end up at like a 2.5. At some point, totals 50.5. No major injuries on Illinois. Duke has one major injury in Terry Moore at safety. He's their best player or second best player. They got two good DBs, but losing him is very impactful. And then I guess Micah Sahakian's out on the offensive line, kind of a depth piece for them. But as far as stylistics go, we kind of know what Illinois is going to do. They're a run-heavy team. They're below average in pace, play a lot of ball control. Duke is very pass-heavy and fast. This is kind of surprising for them. 55% pass rate. And then going from Malik Murphy to Mensah, I think they're probably just going to continue that. Week 1, Illinois slaughtered Western Illinois, had 8 penalties to clean up some stuff there. Duke slaughtered Elon. I mean, they did allow 6.2 yards per pass attempts, so that is semi-concerning. Still beat them 9.3 to 4.4 in yards per play, but we'll get to the concerns with Duke. With Illinois, it's like, are they just Clemson North? They return all this production, but none of it is like very talented. Like a lot of 3 stars, like mid-level guys, transfers coming up from bad programs that ran really hot. This team should have had at least 2 more losses based on post-game win expectancy last year. They bring back Luke Altmaier, 77% completion, 9.9 yards per attempt, 2 big-time throws, no turnover-worthy plays. Took 2 sacks. He's not the most mobile, but he's functional mobility. The way they've used him in the past is sort of a glorified game manager who does occasionally get them out of more binds than just like a typical game manager. He can run a little bit. He is a former 4-star. But the weapons are worse for this team. You lose 2 big receivers. And the guy I thought would be your number 1 receiver, Hudson Clement, really wasn't. Hank Beatty ended up being that with 108 yards, but he didn't even start. They kind of just rotated 6 wide receivers evenly, so it's pretty hard to say how this unit's going to shake out. They used 3 backs. Valentine mostly played at the end of the game, but Aiden Lawfrey had 11.2 yards per carry, kind of iced Fagan a little bit. That was solid to see. The offensive line returns all 5 starters, but this unit was average last year. So, yeah, they come in 14th and 13th. They did a great job against an FCS team. How much are they really going to jump? So this is like the Clemson thing. When you're 70th on the offensive line, Illinois was a little better than that. But, like, is this team 12th? Probably not. Not with what they have on their team. Like, you go back and you look, where are these players from? So you go back and you see, like, Melvin Priestley. He had a good year. He's an FCS transfer. Like, he's not Caden Proctor. I'm sorry. It just kind of is what it is. So I think there's a ceiling to this group is what I'm trying to say. And they probably are already close to it. As far as what this team is facing, Duke's defense is a major concern for me. They lost 6 defensive starters. The defensive line is okay, I think, with Vincent Anthony, Wesley Williams, Aaron Hall. Defensive line is decent. Linebacker, I think, is decent too, with Trey Freeman and Nick Morris is coming back from injury. I have a lot of problems with the secondary. You're putting so much on the shoulders of Chandler Rivers because Terry Moore's hurt. He's not going to play in this game. Those are your 2 good defensive backs. Now you have 1. There's enough room to take advantage of the others. And 6.2 yards per pass attempt to Elon is not a good thing. Yeah, it's 6.2, but you don't want to be allowing, like, when you play these FCS teams, you want to be at like 4 or 5. So we'll see on this. I will say Duke, kind of a weird game. They had a 78-yard punt return against Elon. They did miss a field goal, too, for what it's worth. But, yeah, I'm not buying the defense right now. As far as Duke's offense, I think they're upgraded, though. You get Mensah coming in, 79% completion, 11.4 yards per attempt, 4 big-time throws, no turnover-worthy plays. It's a cupcake opponent. But, yeah, I mean, he was awesome with Tulane. Great showing right away. Did take 2 sacks, but offensive line looked good for Duke. I think that's a strength. I think the pass catchers maybe are a little better. They're formidable. You bring in Cooper Barcates from Harvard, had 117 yards. Andrell Anthony comes in from Oklahoma, had a good game, plus Sean Brown and Samir Higgins, both solid receivers. Your running back room brings back Jaquez Moore from injury. Anderson Castle comes in for depth from App State. It's a good unit. The offensive line only lost one starter, too. The unit was good. The only question is, like, you had 3 really good starters that are returning and Bruno Fina, who was legitimately one of the worst players in the country. That didn't change against Elon either. He played below average there, but you lose Sahakian, so you don't really have a lot of options. They're forced to plug the one gap they have with Jordan Larson from South Dakota. There's a chance you have 2 below average offensive linemen here. We'll see how Fina develops and Larson transfers up from the FCS. I don't know how that's going to go. You're facing Illinois on defense. They lost 3 starters. All of them were on the defensive line, which in this matchup is not great. Like, Duke's trying to throw the ball over you. And the secondary is very good. Basically, your whole secondary is back. Miles Scott, Matthew Bailey, Xavier Scott. They're all back, and they're very good. The front 7 is where I have the question. So are we going to run the ball down Illinois' throat? You know, like Alec Bryan and Gabe Jacques are on the edge. They don't really have anyone on the edge, on the interior. Like Gentle Hunt is another FCS transfer previously coming up and playing like a lot of snaps. I think you want to run the ball down Illinois' throat this year if you can, not throw into that secondary, but that's what Duke is going to try to do. So that is a big concern for me. As far as the numbers, we definitely have an edge on Duke's side. Duke is just contrary to popular belief, like Duke was a team very close to Illinois in power ratings last year. And the reason we do power ratings is looking forward. Like, I know people hate the power rating stuff. It's usually the people that watch ESPN and are like, how could Texas still be favored over Ohio State even though they won the game or they lost the game? Well, it's like, yeah, 82% post-game win expectancy. We have more metrics than wins and losses now. This is the way. If you're betting games and you're trying to accurately forecast them, we're not saying who should get in the college football playoff. We're saying who should win these games. Duke was very close to Illinois just last year, and the teams are a lot similar this year. So overall, we currently have this right around a pick 'em. So there is value on the Duke side. If you're looking at a total 49.5 currently, we have a little value towards the over, not a lot. Probably staying away there. Boston College, Michigan State. This is a game. Lead Michigan State's direction. I played a -3. I think the 3.5 is fine. You can play this if you would like. I think the hook is important, but honestly, this probably is going to move more. So honestly, I honestly probably should have just put bet on here, but the 3.5 was enough to scare me. I took a 3. Boston College injuries. Jonathan Montague, dynamic receiver. He's got an ACL. Owen Stoutmeyer also didn't play in their week 1 game. He's a defensive lineman who's very important. Michigan State did not have Nakai Martinez or Dontavius Nash, a couple defensive backs. Stylistically, under Bill O'Brien, Boston College is very run-heavy, very slow. Michigan State also went very run-heavy and very slow in their first game. They'll be a little more balanced when games are competitive. Boston College slaughtered Fordham. Absolute decimation. Michigan State beat Western Michigan pretty soundly, but not as much as you'd think. 23-6. 5.3 yards per play to 3.8. Western Michigan really shot themselves in the foot as many times as they possibly can. They missed a field goal, a bunch of turnover on downs. So I wasn't all that impressed with Michigan State, but I still think they're the better team here. Western Michigan had a turnover on down at the Michigan State 26. They had another turnover on down at the Michigan State 31. They gave up a safety, and they missed a field goal. What in the world is Western Michigan doing? Anyway, in this game, you move to Dylan Lonergan at QB for Boston College. Good showing in the first game, 76.5% completion, 7.9 yards per attempt, 3 big-time throws, no turnover-worthy plays. Took 2 sacks, so his pressure-to-sack ratio needs to improve because pressure rate was good. The offensive line did a decent job. I have questions with the skill position players. Turbo Richard and Jordan McDonald, both below 3.5 yards per carry against an FCS team. That's horrible. Lewis Bond did go for 138 yards. Great showing from him. But what else do they have? Like, I was expecting Jaden Skeet and Reed Harris to do something. They both played a lot, did nothing. It was actually Dawson Pooh, 96 yards. VJ Wilkins, 55 yards. The rotational guys that stepped up. The skill players might go through some changes with Boston College this year. The O-line had a good showing. I think they'll be worse than last year. They lost 3 starters. 2 of them were Drew Kendall and Ozzie Trapillo. Awesome guys. But they were hurt, so 4 players come back with some degree of experience. This will be a good O-line, just probably a little bit worse. The Michigan State defense, that they'll face, I think is going to be a little bit better. They do lose 7 players, but the defensive line looks good with some rotational players back, led by Jalen Thompson. He's good. The linebacker room is much improved with Wayne Matthews, Darius Snow, and Jordan Hall all back. My biggest concern is still the secondary with Nakai Martinez not playing. A lot of low-level transfers started and played for Michigan State last week, like Josh Eaton from Texas State, Malcolm Bell from UConn. Martinez is their best player in the secondary by far, so they need him back in this game. But then you go to the other side, Michigan State. They are the more talented team, just straight up. So why the hesitation at 3.5? It's basically Aiden Childs, and why I think the hook is important. For all the good he does, there's so much bad. 74% completion, 6.7 yards per attempt, no big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays. Luckily, neither of those was converted. Took 4 sacks, a 40% pressure to sack ratio. That's awful. Just the awareness for him is still so bad. Having this as your outcome against Western Michigan after a year where you nearly led the country in turnover-worthy plays, took a ton of sacks, and the offensive line's a little better. It's not all on Childs, but this year, at least through week 1, like this is starting to become more and more of a concern. The offensive line last year, honestly, probably wasn't even as bad as I thought. Like Luke Newman got drafted. They lose him, of course. They lose 2 other starters, 3 in total. The 2 returners are absolutely horrible. Your transfers are Matt Gulbin from Wake Forest, Luke Vincich from Oregon State, and Connor Moore from Montana State. They all played awful in their first game. They also rotated too much. Way too cute with it. Like, they need to button this up. Your skill position players leave a lot to be desired. They actually are still probably a little better than last year's group. I just wish you had gone out and done more than Elijah Tolliver at running back. It was no surprise to see Mekhi Frazier and Brandon Tulis like run laps around him originally. 7.4 yards per carry for the both of them. Not sure why they went out and got Tolliver. Receivers actually probably better. Nick Marsh is a stud. Omari Kelly and Krishawn McCray from Middle Tennessee and Kent State give you some legit options. And then Jack Velling is back. They played a ton of 12 personnel too with Michael Masunis. So this is probably actually a better unit. If Childs could just get his head on straight, stop taking sacks and throwing picks, like they would be live in games. We'll see. Defensively, Boston College, they had a good showing in their first game. They lose 5 players. They lost a stud in Donovan Ezeraku. The D-line is really inexperienced outside of Quintavious Hutchings, and Owen Stoudemire not playing is a big problem. He's their biggest player in the interior. I think you're probably going to be able to exploit that defensive line and have more time to throw. I think linebacker, probably a little better, but still only Davion Crouch is proven here. The secondary should be the strength of the team, honestly. You get back Amari Jackson. You have a lot of depth pieces that have played a lot of football for this team over the years. And a lot of them got experience when players like Jackson went down last year. Like Max Tucker, decent player. At safety, Carter Davis had a good showing. KP Price. These are players that are, I think, solid, but not true difference makers. But we know how much Aiden Childs loves to throw interceptions and put the ball in harm's way. So this could be an avenue to potentially exploit for this team. Again, I took a -3 with Michigan State. Only reason I didn't put that on the screen is it's changed to 3.5. But now that I look back at it, I probably just should have put the bet number up there. We'll change that on the back end for you guys. And if you're in Discord, you already saw this and got the 3. If you're ever interested in that, it's in the link below. Don't talk about it too much, but it is there. As far as where we make this game and the line in the contest, we currently have this closer to -5. The total we have, if you want to look at something that's not gone, I think under is in play. 2 really slow teams and offenses with questions. We make this at 43. So a little bit of value there. Something I actually might look at after the show. Pace is good if you're looking at unders. Decent look there. Oklahoma State, Oregon. One that wasn't on my radar until someone brought it up to me in Discord. 28-point spread in favor of the Ducks. 57.5 total. Oklahoma State somehow has found their way into losing like half their team before week 1 is even over. House Hejny out at quarterback. Talon Shetron tore his ACL. Wendell Gregory at linebacker got arrested. Rodney Fields, he didn't play in their first game. He's questionable. Kason Carpenter, interior offensive lineman, didn't play in their first game. Questionable. Deshaun Brown, probably your best edge rusher, out. Michael Diotta, defensive tackle. Oscar Hammond, tight end. Jalen Davies, corner. None of them played in week 1. Zaquan Patterson, probably your best safety before the year, kicked off the team. What is going on at Oklahoma State? This team is a mess. They were messing around with UT Martin. Now, UT Martin, good FCS team, probably like a top 10 team. They have a lot of good players. You'll actually recognize some of their names. I'm going to type. I've got this cool tool in the back end where I can just type in a team to see what happened in their games. Jace Bauer's on this team from Central Michigan and Sam Houston. John Gentry's on this team. It's not a bad FCS team by any means, but still, can't be messing around with FCS teams. On the Oregon side, they do some injuries as well. Evan Stewart, Torres Patella, Trey McNutt, their 5-star defensive backs out. Jerry Dickey suspended. Michael Gardner, he's out for the year too. Only player that had kind of an unexpected absence was Theron Johnson, the transfer defensive back. I think he'll probably play in this game just because you played an FCS team in week 1. They smacked around Montana State, who is a very good FCS team, by the way. 7.9 yards per play to 4.2. A lot of services had them as like the 3rd ranked FCS team. So that's at least worth noting. And overall, I think you have two teams going in opposite directions here. As Mike Gundy will tell you, they're not spending as much money as Oregon. As Dan Lanning will tell you, you kind of need to spend to win in today's age of football. But what are these teams doing? Right now, Oklahoma State, very pass heavy. This team is playing pretty fast too. As far as Oregon, they're balanced. They're right on average in pace of play and pass rate, really. It's a very, very balanced team. In the quarterback room, so Hejny's gone. Zane Flores came in, 65% completion percentage, 6.8 yards per attempt. 1 big-time throw, 1 turnover-worthy play, unconverted to. He's not the most mobile, 8 yards, 40% pressure to sack ratio, needs to improve, just no doubt about it. Skill position group is really, really bad. Caleb Hicks had 2.7 yards per carry. Sesi Valahi had 3.6 yards per carry. Pass catchers are really weak. Obviously, you lose a lot of guys like Stribling. You lost your top 3 receivers. Then you lost Shetron to ACL. Terrell Davis is an FCS transfer. He's your number 1 receiver. Your number 2 is Shamar Rigby from Purdue, which is a mess of a unit here. Your offensive line, they lost their top 6 players this year. Kason Carpenter didn't play because of injury. The only above-average projected starter was Austin Kowecki. This is a straight-up awful offensive line. And then you're facing Oregon's defense, who's probably just going to play with their food again here. But, I mean, despite returning just 3 starters, 2 of them are Mateo Uagalele and Tatum Tuodi. Those edge rushers are unbelievable. And then on the inside, like, they did start a redshirt freshman 4-star over Bear Alexander. That was a surprise. Tion Gray. He joined Amari Washington, but that unit is good too. Linebacker, Bryce Betcher is back. Your secondary, they lost everybody, but your transfers that are going to start are awesome. Jaden Kennedy from Ole Miss, Dylan Thieneman from Purdue, plus your elite recruits, not to mention Theron Johnson from Northwestern didn't even play. This unit is going to smash this Oklahoma State offense, I think. On the other side, Dante Moore is a little bit of a concern. We sort of had a little cameo of him with UCLA 2 years ago, played horribly, was just an untenable situation, so I wouldn't put a lot of that on him. This is one of the best offensive systems in the country. It's a buttoned-up offense. They don't ask the QB to do a lot, evidenced by the 0 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays, and still you have a 78% completion percentage, 9.3 yards per pass attempt. Offensive line's good, kept him clean. And at the end of the day, Dante Moore is still a 5-star quarterback, so there's just no way you could give an edge to Oklahoma at the QB position in this game. Skill position players, even with all the injuries, it's just vastly different. And first of all, Oregon didn't use Tulane transfer Mekhi Hughes, which I was very surprised. But also, you have to look at this kind of this way. They used Noah Whittington. He's a veteran with his team. He had 6.8 yards per carry. He's very good. And then everyone else who played, Derriere Hill, Jaden Lamar, DeJuan Ruggs, these are basically all highly recruited players, 4 stars, 5 stars. Mekhi Hughes is like the lowest recruit out of this group other than Whittington. So it shouldn't be like terribly surprising when G5 transfers come up and they don't get the role you want. Hughes was a particularly good G5 transfer, so I'm still a little skeptical. I wonder if there's like some discipline stuff we don't know about. Lanning sort of alluded to that, but we'll see on this. It's going to be a committee regardless. Wide receiver, even losing Evan Stewart, they've got a lot of good players. Malik Benson actually showed up and had a decent game, 51 yards. Gary Bryant scored the touchdown. DeCorian Moore was blocking like crazy on that play, the 5-star freshman. They also had 7 catches combined. Kenyon Sadiq had a good touchdown at tight end. This unit's just more talented than Oklahoma State. And the offensive line's just better too. You lose 4 starters, only your center's back, but transfers, I have questions long-term when you play like Ohio State or something, because Isaiah World from Nevada, Alex Harkey from Texas State, Pregnon from USC. Pregnon did get hurt in this game, but he should play. Anyway, they're lower level. So when you play the absolutely elite, what does it look like? That's not Oklahoma State. Plus, when Pregnon got hurt, former starter Bedford came right in. So it's a pretty good unit overall to just fall back on. A lot of depth overall. As far as the defense they'll face for Oklahoma State, we do projections to try to see who is going to start for these teams. We mentioned the injuries at the top. They've lost like 4 starters already to injury, arguably more. And their transfers, I mean, just like a lot of these guys are such low level. On the defensive line, you have combinations of Wendell Gregory and Demarion Thomas. Okay, they're SEC transfers. But Ryan McCoy's from Akron and Brandon Rawls is from Saginaw Valley State. Both of them started. The secondary, I think, might be brutal. Most of the high-level transfers, like DeAndre Boykin, Jalen Davies, Mordecai McDaniel didn't play. Only J.K. Johnson played, and he didn't even start. I mean, this team is not serious right now. You're playing really low-level 3-stars, walk-ons, like incumbents that were disasters last year. They couldn't get on the field over last year's players. Oregon might win this game by 30 points if they're trying. And fortunately, they don't have a hard team next week. This is not a look-ahead spot for those of you narrative people. And when you just look at the talent gap between these teams, we make this 33 points. Like, there's still some juice to be squeezed out of this. Plus, like, if you want to talk about the motivation stuff, I don't think Gundy going out and calling out Dan Lanning is really going to do any favors for himself. I'm not a narrative guy, but I mean, just like, would I rather have the opposing coach call me out or not? If I'm back in Oklahoma State, I think Gundy, you should probably keep your mouth shut. Anyway, that's where we are. As far as the total goes, we make this 58. So not really anything to play there, but we're taking Oregon minus the 28. Couple games left. We have USF, Florida. USF with an awesome showing against Boise State. They're now 17-point underdogs, 54.5 total. That was a great game. And the only injuries really, Jaden Alexis and Derek Bowman didn't play. That was surprising. For Florida, they held a lot of guys out as they played Long Island. Dallas Wilson didn't play. Probably won't play here. Aiden Mazzell didn't play. Those are 2 receivers. Caleb Banks at defensive tackle didn't play, nor LJ McCray. So they should be healthier here, but this team is so talented. Stylistics, USF has a 51% pass rate. They're very fast. They play the speed of light. Florida has a 44% pass rate, a little below average in terms of pace. For USF, very impressive win against Boise State. Outgained them solidly 7.0 to 4.4, even with 8 penalties. Forced 3 turnovers, multiple turnover on downs. They did allow Boise to move the ball at times, which is a concern for me. And honestly, like, people probably are making too much of this win to begin with. As much as people don't want to hear this, Boise State was closer to USF than they were to Penn State last year. Guy ducks as he gets battered in the comments, but it just is what it is. Boise State was a G5 team that played a Mountain West schedule. You're getting the 12 best teams in the playoff. The G5 does not generally deserve a representative as much as I love the G5. So anyway, I didn't think the upset was all that exciting. Well, it was exciting. Surprising is the right word, but we had USF, so that was great. Anyway, a couple things that happened in that game quickly. You know, like Boise State fumbles on the USF 39. Boise State fumbles on the USF 16. Boise State is a turnover on downs at the USF 23. Boise State fumbles on the USF 12. Like, Boise State got in scoring position quite a bit and came away like empty-handed every time. So that's at least a concern for me moving forward. Just want to note that Florida slaughtered LIU. So the only thing that I noted was 12 penalties. I need to clean that up. QB, Byron Brown, 66% completion, 8.8 yards per attempt, 2 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays, 43 rushing yards despite taking 4 sacks. USF allowed a 30% pressure rate against a worse defensive line in Boise State, and his pressure-to-sack ratio was an astronomical 44%. Other things, wide receivers dropped 4 passes. The penalties were a problem. One of his insane touchdown runs was called back. There are problems with the infrastructure. Byron Brown, he does a lot to create for this team. He holds onto the ball forever because he trusts his ability to escape pressure, create big plays. If he doesn't get called for a penalty or his teammates don't, that's great. But it also leads to a lot of negative plays like that astronomical sack percentage. So that is a concern for me. His skill position players are also bad. Cartevious Norton, 2.1 yards per carry. Sam Franklin, 2.3. Just stuffed routinely against Boise State. They kind of got themselves into weird field position a bunch of times and long down and distance. And then it was a Byron Brown big play that bailed them out, whether through the air or on the ground. And all the receivers had drops basically, but Keyshawn Singleton, 93 yards. Chaz Nimrod, 96, sort of bailed him out on those big plays, which is a credit to Byron Brown and a negative for Boise State. But I still have questions with the pass catching group. In American play, I think they're fine. Against Florida, this is a big question. The offensive line also has questions. They returned 5 starters from a unit that was horrible last year. They were very hurt, so that's part of the problem. And they bring back 5 guys with starting experience again. 2 of them didn't start in favor of transfers, Thomas Schrader from App State and Connor McLaughlin from Stanford. The offensive line's better, but they were like 120th last year. So now you go from that, can they get to average would be a huge step, which I don't even know if they're quite that high. And you're facing Florida. This Florida team is so good on defense. They only lost 3 full-time starters. Tyreek Sapp is an absolute all-American candidate off the edge. Cameron James and George Gums fill it out. Inside, you have Jamari Lyons. They didn't even have LJ McCray, a 5-star, or Caleb Banks. Linebacker room, you have Miles Graham, Aaron Childs, and Jaden Robinson. Elite players. The front 7 was great last year. The biggest concern was the secondary. They got ravaged through the air. They do a couple things. They go out and they hire a new secondary coach from Arkansas who's done a fantastic job there before he comes over here. They're going to need it because they don't go to the portal. They're relying on depth, and they have a lot of really good players in the secondary, at least if you're looking at recruiting rankings. They just were not maximized under the previous staff. So this is definitely a bet on coaching. But, I mean, you go down the list. Cormani McLean, 5-star. Devin Moore, 4-star. Dejon Johnson, 4-star. Sharif Denson, 4-star. Bryce Thornton, 4-star. Jordan Castile, 4-star. They don't have a 3-star in the 2-deep. In fact, you go beyond that. They don't have it. You have to go really deep on this roster to find a 3-star. Multiple 5s, over double-digit 4s. This team had no business being as bad as they were in the secondary. Week 1, will it matter? That's a big question. But fortunately, Byron Brown is not the best passer. He wins through creating, extending plays with his legs. I think the secondary can have a chance to succeed against him. Conversely, DJ Lagway looked pretty good coming off the injury in week 1, 83% completion, 7.1 yards per attempt, no turnover-worthy plays. He did take 2 sacks. That was a 40% pressure to sack ratio. It seemed like he was just messing around back there. His skill players are unbelievably good. Jaden Ball, 11.6 yards per carry. He iced Jacoby Jackson. That's still an elite rushing pairing. They didn't even need Eugene Wilson. He had -4 yards on 5 catches. They really limited his snaps, though, and what he was doing. So I think it's kind of just like, all right, Eugene, let's just get you some snaps, get you ready for the gauntlet of your schedule you're playing. But they also didn't have Dallas Wilson or Aiden Mazzell. 5-star Vernell Brown stole the show with that crazy one-handed catch down the sideline, 79 yards. They use a lot of 12 personnel, which surprised me. Maybe they'll do that a little more this year. But all I'm trying to say is even though you have like Dallas Wilson out, Eugene Wilson's still there. 5-stars like Vernell Brown are waiting in the wings. The skill position group is so good. And then your offensive line, this was a borderline top 10 unit last year that lost 1 player. So this is one like hole you could poke. Like they're 42nd in pass blocking because they were messing around against LIU. We're expecting them to be much higher in the SEC. We currently have them as the 3rd best offensive line in this conference. So you can pick and choose what you want to do. And USF's defense has concerns. They come in 87th overall. They lost 4 starters, but we're looking at transfers across the board here. Your starters are Denard Flowers from Murray State, Josh Seliscar from Texas A&M, Devin Lee from Vandy, and Trevion Mitchell from West Florida. It's just not good enough against a team like Florida. Even if they had pretty decent metrics against Boise, it's a different level of team. Linebackers are great for this team. Mac Harris and Jalen Schuler, you're going to ask them to do a lot to cover this spread against Florida. The secondary actually mostly stood up. I was kind of surprised by this. They weren't great last year, but James Duclona from Wisconsin was the best player on the field in the secondary for them. There are still questions, like they started 4 incumbents from a group that was really shaky last year, like Tavin Ward was pretty bad. So I was surprised that they did that. They have more transfers, but they didn't elect to go that route outside of Duclona. But Lagway should have his way. This is just too much of a skill gap between these teams, as good as South Florida played in that first game. Even with the upgrades that just mathematically occurred from that contest, there were still enough red flags, especially defensively, where you just can't get there. We currently make this at -18. Not a lot of juice to be squeezed, which is why I haven't taken it yet. We'll debate this. It's probably going to move a little bit more, but as you get to the 17, and some of these are juiced, there are 17.5s popping, just not quite enough. Maybe something you look at if you're really trying to get deep in the card. Kansas, Missouri. I believe this is the last one we'll do. We bet Missouri minus a 6. It's at 6.5 now, which is still fine. You're before that key number. Injuries, Kansas somehow has found a way to get really battered. Gage Keys, defensive lineman. Dylan Brooks, linebacker. Joseph Sipp, he's an outside linebacker edge. Bengali Kamara, linebacker. Jason Gilliam, linebacker. None of them are on the depth chart. Kansas is as good as they've played in their first 2 games. They have actually been downgraded power rating wise because of all this cluster of injuries on defense. Not by a lot, but by a little bit. So what have we seen so far? They beat the snot out of, Fresno State, who looked pretty good last week. 6.6 yards per play to 3.9. Wasn't really in question at all. And then they played Wagner, is what it is. Missouri slaughtered Central Arkansas, so that is what it is as well. They're definitely the healthier team. They did lose Sam Horn. I'm not really worried about that. Bo Pribula should have been the rightful starter to begin with. The weirdest thing is their kicker tore his ACL, Blake Craig. They're moving to Robert Meyer. The only thing we know about him is he's made all 4 of his extra points that he's kicked, but haven't seen much of him at all. So that's the injury front. Kansas is really going through it right now. As far as quarterbacks, Jalen Daniels, he's been good. 78% completion, 9.9 yards per attempt, 3 Big Ten throws, 1 turnover-worthy play, 5.9 yards per carry on the ground, only taken 1 sack. That's a 7.7% pressure to sack ratio. That's elite. The only concern I have is, don't get yourself killed out there, man. He's taking a lot of unnecessary contacts. I'm worried long-term. He's healthy now. His skill position players have impressed me a little bit. Daniel Highshaw is dynamic. LaShawn Williams should be back in this game. Both of them over 6 yards per carry. The receivers, I think, still aren't quite what they need. Like Emmanuel Henderson from Bama, Cam Pickett from Ball State, who honestly kind of got benched last game. Only played 11 snaps. Levi Wentz from Albany. They've used more 12 with Deshaun Hanika, Bowden Grown, and Leighton Cure. It's just a step back from last year where they were losing so much, like Luke Grimm. And now against a better team, I'm a little worried about that unit. The offensive line, they returned 2 starters, both of them good, Bryce Foster and Kobe Baines. They've been rotating left guard and right tackle, so I don't know who's going to start, and I don't know how long they're going to play. They lost a lot, so I think this offensive line still profiles a little worse than last year, but definitely good return so far. Just want to see them solidify that right tackle and left guard spot. Missouri's defense, they returned 4 starters, and a lot of these come in the secondary. They returned 4 starters in the secondary. They actually only lost 4 starters. Let me rephrase that. Missouri's defense lost 4 starters. Out of their returning starters, they have 4 in the secondary. Dre Norwood, Marvin Burks were bad last year. I think you could potentially look to replace them. Toriano Pride, Dalen Carnell were awesome, and Jalen Catalan ended up being your 5th starter from UNLV. Awesome player. They brought in other transfers like Mose Phillips, Santana Banner from Virginia Tech and Northern Illinois. I think those guys should push Norwood and Burks at some point if they can't take a step forward. Linebacker's good. Tristan Newsom's back, and Josiah Trotter comes in from West Virginia. And then the defensive line has improved with Nate Johnson coming from App State, Damon Wilson coming from Georgia. They're already helping a group that was very good with Zion Young and Chris McClellan. This is a quality defense. I don't think they're 6th overall, like the current efficiency metrics have them, but I think this unit is probably around top 30, close to 20 maybe. This is the hardest matchup Kansas has faced by a large margin. All those concerns we had coming into the year, the new pass catchers, the changes on the offensive line, this is probably where you see them tested for the first time. Quarterback for Missouri, it's Bo Pribula. Sam Horn got hurt right away, sad for him. But Pribula had a good showing, and I liked him a little more than Horn either way because of what he can do on the ground. 6.5 yards per carry already, 65 rushing yards, only took 1 sack, 82% completion, 10 yards per attempt, 1 big-time throw, no turnover-worthy plays. Yeah, it was Central Arkansas, but again, he did what you wanted him to do. At least he didn't perform negatively. Running game, Ahmad Hardy, 10 yards per carry. He's the UL Monroe transfer. Jamal Roberts, change of pace behind him was good. The receiving room lost a ton. You lose like Luther Burden. It's very hard to replace those players. But Marquise Johnson, Joshua Manning, Kevin Coleman did an admirable job. And Brett Norfleet is a rock-solid tight end. The one thing I'll say about this, replacing those guys, Coleman, Manning, and then they played a little bit of Donovan Olugbode. He's a freshman. They're all 4-stars, so you have a lot of talent on this team. It's not like you're going from Luther Burden to the barren cupboard. There's at least some players that are highly recruited behind them. They won't be as good, but they're definitely talented. The offensive line, you lose 3 starters. Big one was Armand Membu. And, your returners are pretty good. Like Caden Green and Connor Tolson were excellent. Your transfers are Dominic Goodis from Michigan, Keegan Trost from Wake Forest. Your only newcomer is Curtis Piegler. He's an incumbent. Gajewski is a legitimate liability. He was awful with Michigan, but otherwise, this is a pretty solid unit. And they're facing Kansas's defense, which again, this team is so hurt already. Somehow, I mean, first of all, they only returned 2 defensive starters. One of them is Dylan Brooks. He's hurt. The other one is Dean Miller. He's lost snaps to Justice Finkley and Leroy Harris. Finkley's good. He's from Texas. Leroy Harris is from Chattanooga. I'm not sure what's going on there. The defensive line interior group has a lot of rotational players led by Dunn. That unit is fine. Very, very average. But then linebacker, I mean, we mentioned it. 3 guys that would start for you. Sip, Gilliam, Bengali, Kamara, all hurt. And for sure, Kamara won't return for this game. I don't think any of them will. In the secondary, your leading returner is Taylor Davis. He barely played 300 snaps last year. They're playing 4 players that are incumbents in Lyric Rawls. So it's legitimately 3 players that have not seen the field a lot. 4 if you want to include Davis because he barely got 300 snaps. And then Lyric Rawls is an Oklahoma State transfer. Like, this secondary is a huge concern. Fortunately, you face like E.J. Warner. They just couldn't protect him enough in that game. That was when the front 7 was a little healthier. And then you played an FCS team. Like, Missouri is going to pressure you a lot more than those 2 contests. So we're on Missouri. Think this is a spot where they get Kansas. We currently make this spread. Let's see here. I always flip between these tabs, so excuse me. We'll get this buttoned up as the season goes along. We currently have Missouri. We have this minus 7.5, so definitely a little value left. I would try to get this before the key number. We took a 6.5. But that will do it for us today. People asked for a recap, which I think is a good idea. I failed to do this previously. So let's look at all of the games we've taken so far and tell you which ones we've taken so far. I'll give you a sneak preview to the show next week too, because there's a couple games we'll talk about in depth that we didn't talk about on the show that we've already bet. So Kansas, Missouri, we have Missouri minus 6. 6.5 is the current line. Think that's fine. Michigan State, we took minus 3. They're currently minus 3.5. Think that's fine. Mississippi State, we took a plus 7. Plus 6 is on the board. Think that's completely fine. A few look aheads, we took an under in Ball State in Auburn at 55.5. Took Cincinnati minus 19.5 against Bowling Green. Central Michigan plus 21.5 against Pittsburgh. I'm not sure about that one. Wait and see. I need to do some extra research. Their center's out for the year. That was announced after I took it, so that might be a bad bet. And then San Jose State and Texas over 51 is where we land now. But the 3 from this show, Missouri, Michigan State, Mississippi State. Oh, I didn't even put Oregon in here. My bad. Oregon as well. We took Oregon minus 28. That number is still widely available. But believe that will do it for us. One more quick glance. If you have any feedback, please leave it in the comments. It does mean a lot. But we'll be back maybe tomorrow, maybe Thursday. Oh, in the comments, let me know what games you want to hear about for the greasy section. But that'll for sure do it this time. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you again next time.